Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, and today we are rocking a dark bean roast. Just got up a little while ago, finished making this, decided to do a video, and this is oh so good, oh so good. Today's video, we're going to talk about unleashing your creativity with free 3D printing of cityscapes using map2model.com. This is going to be pretty good because usually in the past, what we've ended up seeing with printing cityscapes and maps, in other words, you get on Google Earth or something like that, and then you have to pay money, and then you get the file, and then you get 3D representation of cities and topography and geography and all of those ography things, and you're able to get the file and then print them out, and then you could sell them or just make your own. But the problem is there's always money involved. And what's interesting to note is that all of the data that comes for these paid programs is free. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't mind people making money, but when stuff comes up and it's like, hey, you're using free information, maybe somebody ought to throw us a bone. And that's what happened with the map2model.com is you can actually print cityscapes for free. Yeah, it doesn't cost you anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into this. Excuse me. So here we are, map2model.com, and this is the opening page. So we're going to kind of go over some of the information, then we'll show you how we actually do this and some things that you might want to take into considerations, lessons learned. But other than that, it's a very small learning curve. And then we'll show you what we printed out. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with map2model.com. So this is the main screen. You have your map, and just kind of like in Google Earth, you can zoom out, you can zoom in, and then you can choose rectangle, square, circle, polygon. You can put a custom size in there, which comes in handy. You can also do your map size is set by 150 millimeters, the base layer. This is kind of important because if your base layer is not thick enough, you might get some translucency. In other words, you'd be able to see beneath it, and that can be a problem. And then you could end up changing the color of that if you want to paint this up. And this is pretty wild. You could also do topography. That's kind of an experimental thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. And then you can choose to have a frame. And with that, you can go through and you can change the frame height, the thickness, the color of the frame. And again, if you have a multi-material printer, kind of like an AMS with Bamboo or a CFS with Creality, you can set these colors to the colors that you have in your multi-material system or multi-color printing system, and you can print those colors out of this STL of the cityscape. And that's for the base features, or for the base. And then if we go to features, we have the ability to have roads, water, grass, buildings, sand, piers, and we could go through and we could change a bunch of the information. So usually the road height is set to a default of 0.6. We could go through and you could actually change the default width of the roads, which I kind of think that's kind of something that you should do. It's like 5M, does that mean 5 meters? I set that to about 10, so anything that is below a 10, I'll set it to 10, and I've got some good results with that. And then you can also, toggle off footpaths. You could, again, set the road colors, so like maybe you wanted to do the roads in black, or maybe you wanted to do them in green, or some different color, you could set that as well. And then you also have airways and railways and things like that. You also have the chance to do water, and you can set the color for that, and the height of the water as well. The other interesting thing is that you can cut out the water. So in other words, you could make a cityscape, and let's say there's a river running through it. If you got that reference, you're good to go. Brad Pitt, anybody? River runs through it. It's a good movie. Okay. But if you have a river running through or a waterway, you can cut that out of the STL file so that it's left blank. So maybe you want to do some resin action, or just put it down on some blue paper or something. There's just a lot of different options. And then what you could also do is go through and you can say, well, I want grass, I want buildings, I don't want sand, I don't want piers. And you could set the colors as well. As far as buildings, you could set the colors for that, and you could also force basic shapes. Though I will say that you get a little bit of a wonkiness when you just use force basic shapes. And then you could also set the scale of the building. This one's set to 1x, but you could set up to 2, 3, or 4, or whatever. That will actually make the height of the buildings higher. And other than that, that's what we got going on. So what we'll end up doing is let's just kind of go through here, and you have the entire world at your fingertips. And so we're going to go over here to Korea, because that's where I live. That's where I retired, and I do all my hobby stuff here in Seoul, Korea. And there is a waterway. So what we're going to end up doing is, let's zoom in here. And let's say we want to get this waterway. We'll kind of zoom in a little bit like this. And we'll just get something interesting, kind of like, there's a big island there. And what you can end up doing is a number of things. So if we want to select this area, like in a rectangle, you click rectangle and you'll notice that it says click to place the first vertex. So in other words, that's going to be the corner. So let's just kind of click here. And then as you draw it out, you can draw that, however you want. And we're just going to try to make it, we'll just do something like this. So we got a decent amount, and we click and we're done. There's some other things over here that you can click. You can draw a rectangle. You could go through and draw a polygon. You can draw a circle, edit the layers. You could drag the layers. In other words, you could end up moving it around and getting, pretty detailed placement. Click finish. You also have erase. If you wanted to do that, just click it and it's erased, and click finish. The other thing you could end up doing is a square or a circle. So in other words, this would be the center of the circle, and then you just drag that out. And let's say we could do something, let's just do something like that. And then we could move this around and just try to get it so it looks kind of cool. And I think we're good. So we finished that, and then once all our settings over here is pretty good, and the other thing I want to go back to is the base option. So over here on the left, and the base layer for this is 0.6 millimeters. Now what I found is that if you're using like white, how you've seen the cityscapes that are printed in white PLA, what I've noticed is you have to have more layers for that, so that you can't see through those layers. So let's just go ahead and we'll put it at 3 millimeters. We'll do that. We'll go ahead and we'll leave the frame on there, and the frame height will be 1.4, thickness 3 millimeters. We'll just leave that, and then we'll go over here to the roads, and the road height is 0.6 millimeters. Excuse me. And what I found is that road height is pretty tall. So generally what I've found is probably about 0.4, 0.3, 0.4, and that's pretty good. We're not going to include footpaths because the size of the map that we're doing, you're not going to be able to notice the footpaths. And we'll go down here into the water, and we'll leave the water, and then we have grass is green. We'll have the buildings, the basic shapes. We'll leave that as it is, and we'll go over here to where it says on the top right, where it says generate mesh. So it's getting this OSM data, whatever that is, and it's not generating the mesh. Why? This is interesting. The joys of live streaming. So let's try this again. We'll do the circle again, and we'll click on there. We'll do that. We'll generate the mesh. And it doesn't do it again. Oh no. Let's just redo the page. And we'll go back out. And we'll zip out into the world. And we'll go back to Korea. And I found this happens sometimes. So for whatever reason, I'm not sure. But we're just going to go ahead and we'll go back to Seoul and go back to the river. Come on, let's go. And we'll go back to where we were. I am south of Seoul. And let's just zoom in a little bit. And let's about right there. That looks good. We'll go back and we'll do our circle. We'll draw that out. We're good to go. It's all the defaults, so we'll just go ahead and generate mesh. And it doesn't do it again. Seriously, what is going on with this? Generate mesh. Come on. I don't know why. Let's try this. Let's just do this one here. And we'll do the circle there, and we'll do generate mesh and see what happens. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Seriously. Oh, there we go. There we go. For some reason, this locks up from time to time. So an interesting note on this is that what you can end up doing is sometimes I found that you can adjust the information for like your base and your features and your roads and all of those things, and then you can generate the mesh and it works. Other times it doesn't, so you might want to play with that. I think they still need to do a little bit of work on this. I've used this with different, like I'm using Safari, I've used Chrome, and I've experienced the same problem, so I don't think it's browser specific. And then if you wanted to change some things after it's generated, go back and try changing those options there. So as we can see, we got some pretty cool stuff. We've got our roads, we've got our, our water there, and we've got a pretty decent cityscape, again, for a circle, which is pretty nice. And so what we'll end up doing is we could go back and let's change the base layer, and we will make that 3. And we will go to features. We will go to water. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut out the water. And we don't want any sand. We don't want any piers. So we'll just kind of play with that a little bit. We'll generate the mesh again. Man, this is taking a long time. There we go. And here's what we end up with is an interesting model, because now we've got something a little bit different in regards to see how it cut out the water. So if you wanted to say like pour in some blue liquid resin in there, you could really have quite an interesting type of cityscape, and instead of using blue for water, you could cut out the water and you could put in some blue liquid resin, which would be really nice, or just so many different options. As we see here, as we kind of zoom into this, we can see that the shapes of the buildings and everything comes out pretty decent. And again, when we're talking about the height of the roads, if we zoom in on some of these here, you can see that the roads and everything are pretty high. And so that's why we're going to go back to, we'll go back to roads, and a road height, we'll put that, let's try it 0.3. And we'll regenerate this mesh. And there we can see where that looks a little bit better. It's not as, it's more balanced when we take a look at that. So yeah, pretty amazing stuff. So now let's go back. I wonder if we can do Korea again. Let's go ahead and we'll see if we can just delete that now that it's working. And we will scour the world and go back to Korea. And we'll go back to Seoul. And let's see if we can do our original island. This time, let's go ahead and we will do a polygon. And you could do this if you wanted to get a specific layout that you want to cover, that maybe it's a little bit different. Let's just say we're going to do that. We're going to do that because we want to encompass this. We're going to go here and just kind of a different shape, and we'll see what happens. And that clicks to finish, And what we could end up doing is kind of moving that around. And now hold your fingers, cross them. Yes, it ends up working. So there, wow, that came out pretty nice. Look at that. So you could do some custom shapes with this, and you can manipulate all this. That turned out pretty cool. I mean, that is nice. So nice thick base. You could, again, you could change some of these things. And like for example, if we go to the buildings, to the building scale, we could change this. And I want to show you how this will go. So we're going to change this to 3, and then we'll regenerate the mesh, and we'll just kind of take a look at those buildings and how tall they are. We'll regenerate the mesh, and wow, look at that. So again, that's kind of a useful tool that you could do with that. Now, the other thing you could end up doing, you could play around with the different heights and all of that stuff. Pretty amazing. And even though it does have some glitches, notice, like I said, on Safari and Chrome, it has these glitches where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just have to pick the area and then generate the mesh and then go back and change the settings that you want for road heights or water or changing colors or whatever. So yeah, it gets up, it's pretty interesting. If we go up here to the top right, we can see that you can export it as a 3MF, and that will export it with the colors that you have chosen. And the default is set for a bamboo, I think A1 or something, but it has all of the colors already picked out. So if you have a multi-material system, you can make a cityscape print and the colors will already be there. You have to do some tweaking as far as the layer heights, because again, some of them might be too thin and you might be able to see through some of the layers if they're not thick enough. But you could download that as a 3MF. You could also export it as an STL, which is really nice, because as an STL, what you can end up doing is that you just have the basic STL, you don't have any colors, and then you can go back into your slicing software and you could paint your own colors if you wanted to do it that way. So there's a couple of different options with this. So with that, pretty amazing stuff. I want to show you some of the prints that we ended up doing. We did a couple of them, and let's go ahead and we'll drag this one here. And there it is. I know that's kind of fast. That is Camp Humphreys, Korea. So we did that one. And let's, oh, where's the other one? Here's the other one. So there's a round cityscape that I ended up doing. And that's up in Seoul by the Riverwalk in Seoul, or one of the Riverwalks in Seoul. And then after that, I ended up making some frames in Tinkercad. So to put around this stuff. So you can have your own frame made. And if we go back to our thing here, if we go back to base, you can print the frame, which will be attached to your model. It's part of the model itself. But if you hit no frame, and let's go through and we'll regenerate, and then what we notice is that there is no frame. So you could do what I did, make your own frame in like Blender or Tinkercad or whatever, and get the dimensions and use the dimensions for that city, and then you could print your own frame, your own height, your own colors or whatever, and it turns out pretty good. So with that, what I want to end up doing is, what do I want to do next? I want to show you what I did in Tinkercad. I think I want to do that. So here's Tinkercad, and making a picture frame is pretty easy. So basically it just kind of started out as a square, and then like for this here is 150 by 200, and that's the size of the cityscape that I wanted. So basically you just have another bigger square or rectangle, and then made it so that the city dimensions in the blue model that we have here would sit inside your frame. And it takes, it takes a few things. I'm going to post these on my dashboard for K2 on the Creality Cloud website. Eventually I'll put these up. I know I'm kind of slacking, but what we can end up doing is seeing this frame. And then, yeah, I also put some holes on the back so you could like hang this, but you could make a pretty simple frame. If you wanted to, you could also do a circle option like I did here. So I did kind of a little beveled thing, and it has a solid back, and that is a 120 millimeter circle frame. And so when I printed out the cityscape that was round, I can just set it in there. So yeah, we're going to be doing that. And then there's some other things that you could end up doing. Like I ended up putting some lettering on the frame on this one here. But you could just go ahead and download when this gets posted on my dashboard for Creality Cloud. I'll leave this blank, and in your slicer software, what you can end up doing is you could put text on there yourself to whatever you want. So yeah, a lot of different options, or you could, you know, download the STL, you could bring it into Tinkercad, and you could adjust that as needed. The other thing you could end up doing is you could also take this, and if you know the dimensions, then what you could end up doing is kind of changing, or, you know, whatever size that you want, as long as you know the dimensions of the inside corner, you could actually kind of bring this with the ruler in there, and you could click and get some of the dimensions, measure some of that out, or just make your own frame. So yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. So anyway, with that, that turned out pretty good. Some of those, especially the round city, it was pretty nice. I cut the water out of that, and we're going to take a look at the prints that we ended up doing. This is the first one, and what we'll do is we'll make this smaller so that you all can see this. And there it is, Camp Humphreys. So see how it's kind of transparent, and you can, you know, it's really thin, so we can take a look at that. That is what you're going to have to take into consideration with your base layer. So this was just kind of a test run, and what I ended up doing is kind of that. I cut out the water, and all I ended up doing was getting some blue paper, and we have our frame, so we put that in there as just kind of a rough test. So, but when you can see close up on there, you can see all the buildings on Camp Humphreys, and yeah, it turned out pretty good. I really like that. Now here is the other one that I ended up doing. This is the Riverwalk in Seoul, and with the round frame, and you can end up seeing that. That turned out pretty good. So yeah, pretty amazing. Love it, love it. And again, I cut out the river, and with the black backing that we had on the print here, just left that black, so it's kind of an industrial, I don't know, kind of look there, and that turned out pretty good. So between these two models, these were kind of like proof of concept to make sure that I could get this thing to work. This was the first one that I did, and this is where I learned that you had to take your, as you can see, you know, you have to get that base layer has to be more than the default that is set on the program. So we got that done, but this one was definitely the best that came out. And so, yeah, pretty cool. And again, you could color these. I'm going to be doing a bigger one. Matter of fact, I've decided to do a big Seoul, Korea. And I guess we could bring that up. Let's go ahead and we'll bring that up. Let's make sure I got it. And Seoul, Korea prints. Boom. Let's see what we got going on. And we're using the Creality slicing program. So we got that, and boom, we've been a little busy. So I started off with, you know, what we end up seeing here is yes I know, and we can kind of zoom in and we can get a representation of that file and how everything turned out. And again, just pretty amazing. And if you wanted to paint this, you could go through and use your paint. But I just wanted, again, a proof concept to make sure that this worked. And then I went through, and then, of course, I printed out the frame, which we had that. And then later, what I ended up doing is the cityscape in the circle, and that turned out pretty good. Let me see if I can get that. So that was pretty nice. And then again, what we had ended up having is the frame. So again, I think it was like a 0.25 millimeters. So there's a little bit of leeway, flexibility as you set the cityscape into the frame, which turned out pretty good. And then I started playing around with larger, and like this one, some larger prints. I wanted to see that and kind of take a look at, how much filament it would take and what it would look like. And then here's that one of Seoul, Korea, which has its own frame, and might as well go through it. If we select this, and we've got this going on, what we could end up doing is painting, and we come up with our paint tool. So if we have black selected, what we could end up doing, let's go ahead and set this here, and we're going to go ahead and select the fill. We'll do our frame, and boom, we've got our frame there, so we can end up doing some colors. So yeah, pretty amazing. And then if I wanted to, I don't know, now this is going to be interesting because I'm not sure. Let's see how this goes. So you could kind of do stuff like that, go through, and you get some pretty wild looking colors. If I can get through here, there we go. So yeah, just being able to paint and do a lot of different colors or different color variations, you could come up with some pretty interesting artwork, which would really set this out as a display piece, whether it's smaller or large. And talking about large, here's what we ended up doing. If you know that the build plate area for the Creality K2 Plus is 350 by 350 by 350, what I ended up doing is taking that same Seoul, Korea, and what I ended up doing is just kind of slicing it in half. And the reason I did it at a diagonal was because I wanted to miss a lot of the buildings, and it just worked out that way. So for example, let's go back to this one here. Let's pick this one, and we'll go to scale, and let's say we want it, I don't know, what size do we want? Let's say we want to do 600. We'll just set this to 600, and it's set on uniform scale, so it's going to scale it up huge. And yeah, that is huge. And as far as the Z height, let's just take that, and we'll just take that to 12, and we're good there. And then now this is way too big for our build plate area. So what we can end up doing, let's go ahead and cut this. So we've done that, and if we go through and we have our planer cut tool, and what we could end up doing is this here, and we could cut that. So we're good to go, and we're going to go ahead and perform the cut, and there it is, which puts it in this weird thing. So we're going to select that, we'll put that face down, and so now we have two cuts, but the problem is they're still a little bit big. So let's move this out of the way, and then what we could end up doing here is let's cut this down the middle here, so we make this in 4 parts. So and of course we're going to do this. I'll take this down to 45 degrees, and we can see it's pretty good. It'll place it in the middle. So that's pretty good. And we're not worried about cutting buildings in half or whatever, so we're going to go ahead and perform the cut. And come on, let's go. Yes, I know. Select our part. We'll go ahead and put that down. Deselect, and then we could end up having that part of the city. So what we can end up doing is taking a really large cityscape, and it's pretty amazing. You could cut it into different sections, and then you could put those sections together. Another thing that you could end up doing, like let's take this one here and we'll go ahead and we'll cut this, and I'll show you something else that you could end up doing, because you could actually do some connectors on here after you cut this. So we're going to take this, zoom in a little bit here, and we're going to cut that, and we'll just do it like that. And we're going to go down here to where it says add connectors. And we're going to go ahead and do dowels. And what we could end up doing is zooming in here into, let's see, 3 millimeter. Will 3 millimeter work? Yep. So we put a dowel there, and then we'll put a dowel here. And let's just put another one down here just for grins. I don't know, that might be a little big. Yep, that's a little big. So we'll just do those two. And again, this is just kind of going through. We've done that. You could change the size and go through that. This is just kind of an example of what you can do with this. We confirm the connectors on here. We click that, and we're going to go ahead and perform the cut. And boom, there we go. Oh, I hate these little arrow, those error things. Yes, I know. And there, what we end up having, I don't want to do that, off. And then it will also print the dowels. So we have, oh, holy crow, what are we doing? Craziness. Come on, there, move that out of the way. And as we zoom in, there will be your dowels for the connectors. So in other words, you put the holes into the model, and then it also prints out the dowels, so you could put those in, put it together, you know, put a little bit of super glue, and you're good to go. So yeah, pretty interesting on what you can end up doing with this. And let's take, let's go to, well, I cut that one already, and that one and that one. Let's go to the circle. Let's make the circle really big, and we'll see how much filament it would take to print this. So we're going to go ahead and go to scale, and we're going to draw this out, and we're going to fill up the build plate. That's about as full as you can get. And yeah, that is pretty amazing. You can also scale up the frame as well. But we're going to go ahead, and we're set at a layer height of 0.16, and we'll slice this up and we'll see how it turns out. With the smaller layer heights of 0.16, 0.12, what you'll find is it's going to take quite a while. But what's interesting is that we see it's going to take 9 hours and 49 minutes. Filament weight is going to be 354 grams. And yeah, it's going to cost $7.09. So let's go back and we'll change this to, let's change it to 0.2. We'll do that, and then we'll slice this up again, and we'll see the difference. So 9 hours and 45 minutes, 354 grams. Let's see what we get when this is sliced. So that'll reduce the printing time, because now this is 8 hours and 18 minutes, 356 grams. And again, your infill is going to be a thing, but it's $7.14. So yeah, and that's some pretty tall buildings. But if we look at some of the other ones, like things like this, and where if we fill up the build plate, well, let's just go to this one here, because I'm actually, when I get some filament in, I'm going to be printing this. So let's just go ahead and we'll leave it at 0.16. And I want to say it was like 5 or 6 hours, something like that. And, you know, because I'm doing the colors, I'm going to be doing black, white, and gray. So those three colors. And then you can see I have a number of dowels that are printing out on this. This is going to take a little bit, it's going to take some time. So we will go back and talk about Cityscape with map2model.com, and then when that's finished slicing, we'll see how much it costs, and you'll be amazed. It's not, with the Cityscapes, with the round one, of course I exaggerated the the building heights, I want to say it was like points 2 times or 2x for that. And yeah, it turned out really, really nice. But for this cityscape that I'm going to do of Seoul, Korea, the interesting thing on this is the buildings are not going to be so high because it's such a large map and covering a huge area that the buildings are really small. So you still get some height on it. I think I set that to a total of 12 millimeters. So you're not talking a lot of height on this. So I think it'll print that out in like 5 hours, almost 5 or 6 hours, which turns out pretty good. So the map2model.com is really nice. And it's still slicing. Yeah, still slicing. Look at that. Boom. Now we're at 25%. I told you it is taxing. When you have a larger file, especially with creality print, it definitely puts it through its paces. I've got a Mac Mini that is maxed out on memory and stuff like that. So yeah, we got that going on. Let's see. Let's go back to map to model, and we'll play around with that a little bit more. So there it is, our map to model. We'll go back to our map area. Let's just kind of delete that. And I want to show you the topography, which is in the experimental use type of thing. Let's see if we can find something that's got a mountain. And let's just use down at the bottom here, we have a search tool. You could put in an address, sometimes names, Namsang Tower, results not found. Okay, Namsang Park. So maybe this will get us within Namsang Park. No, I don't think it's what we want. Because, yeah, that's down by Pusan. That's not what we want. I want something that's got got some mountains in it. And I really wish this had the map of where you could select and show the satellite views, because then you'd be able to see things. I'd be able to pick out maybe that's it. I don't know. But let's just pick this, because I think, I know where there's some mountains. Sokcho. We definitely got some mountain action here. So this will be interesting. Let's see how this works. And then let's go ahead and we'll do a square. We'll just kind of do that. We'll run our mesh. And we'll see how this works. Oh, I forgot to do so there is the flat. And that turned out, that's good. That's pretty good. But if we're going to go over here to the right, and we're going to hit topography and experimental, sometimes this works, sometimes not so much. How are we doing on our model? Still only 25%. And you'll see we've got a little bit of elevation on there. We need to find a bigger mountain. Let's move this, and we'll kind of go, let's just put it here. Generate the mesh and see what we get as far as topography. Processing features. I think this is going to be big. Yeah. So, yeah, you can actually get some topography. Now, sometimes it works. Most of the time I say it works. Sometimes you'll get some problems, but you can get some good relief maps on this, which is pretty interesting. So if you have some terrain features and cities that are close by, mountains and oceans and valleys and rivers and all that stuff, you can get some pretty amazing looking prints off of this. So yeah, that is pretty amazing for a free product. And this is still going. Oh, seriously. This is going to take a while. I think I had problems with this before, and I had to close everything else out, and just so this was populated, and then it would go through and do it. But for this whole plate area, which is 350 by 350 by 350, so 350, so you're looking at about almost 14 inches. And I think this would be probably about 1 foot, so it's about 300 millimeters by 300, and you have the other piece, but each individual piece ends up being like 5 hours and some change as far as printing. I can't remember the price of this, but yeah, I think this is it's locking up. Thank you, Creality Print, because that's not going. So we'll just close that out. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we ended up going on. You gotta love the live videos. So you get all this cool stuff, and things don't work the way that you want them to work, but you still get to take a look at this map2model.com and be able to print out some really cool stuff. And again, you know, we did our little test pieces, and I'm pretty happy with what we ended up getting. Just again, just taking a look at that. Let me move this out of the way. There you go, so you can see it. And you can see this is printed at a 0.16 millimeter, and you can get some pretty amazing results. So yeah, I mean, it turned out really, really nice. And then with the frame, like I said, get on Tinkercad, you can make your own frame. The other thing that you could end up doing, thinking about this, talking about frames, let's say that you want to do a cityscape and you choose a normal picture frame. So like a 5x7 or a 6x8, you could copy the dimensions of a regular picture frame, and then you could print out or have your cityscape be in the size that'll fit inside the frame that you could buy at, you know, Walmart or Daiso or whatever it is, you know, get some kind of frame so that sets in there, and boom, you've got a custom piece that would look really, really nice. So yeah, just a lot of different ideas that you can do with this. And again, remember that on the map2model.com, my creality is still not closing. Oh, now I got to force quit. Yeah, there we go. So anyway, yeah, a lot of different things that you could do with map2model.com. Again, you got to play around with some of the settings as far as the base heights and things like that. You can have it with a frame or without a frame. You could cut out the water on there, or you could have the water included. A lot of different things. But I mean, as far as what we got going on, it is a pretty cool looking program. Now, the other thing it ends up is that it says here's a commercial license. So you can obtain a commercial license. Let's kind of get on this. By subscribing to Patreon, patreon.com on Smoggy3D. The license grants you the right to use generated mesh data for commercial purposes, and then it goes through that. By subscribing and obtaining a license through Patreon, you agree to comply by the rules and conditions and so on and so forth. But if you're just doing this for personal reasons, like what I'm going to end up doing, is that Thing of Seoul, Korea, and that's going to be an art piece that's going to hang in my apartment for personal use. Map2Model is pretty dang cool. So yeah, pretty amazing stuff. I'm really happy with it. Again, always follow the laws and the rules, so you don't get in trouble. So we got that going on, but some cool stuff. So yeah, that is what we got going on. There's other. What is some of the other one? There was another one. Map2Model. I'm trying to find Snazzy Maps. That was the other one. And it ends up, Snazzy Maps was another one of those. Let's see if we can go to this. Boom, there's Snazzy Maps. And let me just go ahead and we'll get rid of this. We'll minimize that. Snazzy Maps was also that where you can build a map. But this was like, it's just kind of an odd thing on how they end up doing it. So you can pick different categories. Let's just pick grayscale. We'll do that. and then it has the map. The one thing I like about this is it does have the satellite option. So let's just kind of zoom out and we'll zoom into Seoul, Korea. And if we do the satellite, we can kind of go through here and come on, here we go. But even it has its own problems. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? But seriously, you can do the train. So you could look at the train features on this still. So anyway, you've got this here, and then it's like, it's not really user friendly, because then it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this? Okay, we're going to apply the style. We're going to do the size and location. I guess we're going to do that, and width and whatever. Well, now it's set to New York, so latitude and longitude, you can search that way. Let's just apply changes and see what the hell happens. Markers, we don't want markers. And what did it save? Oops, you need an account first. To register. Oh, okay. So they make you register, and it used to, you didn't need to do this. But you can see how it's not really user friendly as the map2model.com. Map2model.com is really, I think, superior when it comes to usability. As far as, you open it up and wherever it is, you're going to zoom in and you're going to say, okay, well, yeah, that's what I want. And then we're going to do our little square. Boom. You select it. That's what I want. Leave everything. And we're just going to go ahead and run that. Click, save, generate, whatever it is. Really intuitive, really easy to use. And boom, there is your map. And of course, this is, I'm glad this brought this up. Notice how this is not blue. This was ocean, but it's not blue. So even if we go back to these features here and we go back to the water, that should be colored blue, but it's not. Let's see if we cut out the water, will it cut out the ocean? Sometimes it doesn't. And as we can see, it cut out the little bit of water there, but it didn't cut out the ocean here. So there are some things that need to be changed with this. I've noticed in some places it treats water as water, it treats ocean as ocean, but in cases like that, it doesn't. For some strange reason. Let's see if we can go over here, and we'll just do a little circle. Let's just zoom in, and we'll just make a little circle there. We'll do that. We'll generate the mesh and see if it does the water this time. So there are some problems with this, and with this one, you can see, for the most part, we got a lot of water features on here, but this area up in here, it didn't cut that out as water, or recognize that as water. So if we leave the water in there, we generate the mesh, again, you're going to get a partial thing. Now you could go through and download this and do your own painting in your Slicer software, but yeah, it ends up, it is what it is. So yeah, while there are a few things that need to get improved with the map2model.com in regards to the cityscapes, like the water, other than that, it's pretty impressive. And it's free for personal use. So keep that in mind. And I'm not sure how much the commercial license is for the Patreon, which is, I'm assuming, like $7 to $10 or whatever. I don't know. Let's pull that up and take a look. Because I don't see anybody talking about that. I ran into this and I've been playing with it, and then I noticed a number of other people got into and posted videos on this on the map2model.com. And let's see, what do we have? Oh, here it is, as it pops up. So the membership options, map2model. Oh, that's okay. map2model for 1 month is $4. And that gives you the full commercial license to sell 3D prints. Let's see, what else do we got? got to see more. So you can't sell the digital files, no mass production, casting, plastic molding. It's got to be 3D printed, authorized seller. If you're selling these prints on lease, please send me a message with your links to your marketplace listing of a seller so it can officially register you as an authorized seller. So yeah, there's some considerations there, but for $4 for 1 month, you could try it out. That's not bad. You know, so let's say if you had a number of cities that you wanted to print and you wanted to sell, just as, I just want to make X, 5 or 6 different cityscapes, boom, pay your $4 and you're good to go. But then, do you have to keep paying it? I think you have to keep paying it to be able to sell them. So there's that. But $4 a month isn't bad. The most popular is $6.80 for 1 month. And I guess it's a recurring thing. So you have to keep doing that like everything else, subscription fees or whatever. Unlimited selling, using photos and renders to promote and showcase your products, adding materials and colors of your prints, making minor modifications such as adding keychain attachments and so on and so forth. On the other one, you can't do a keychain attachment. That doesn't make sense. I don't know. So anyway, but when you look at that for 1 month, $4 or commercial license, see, it's weird because for $4 it says gives you a full commercial license to sell physical 3D printed maps. And then with this one over here, as an active subscriber this tier, you can legally sell unlimited physical prints, not digital files. So what are we talking about there? So on the $4 a month, you can sell the 3D printed maps generated from the website across any platform of your choice. But then on the commercial license for $6.80, you have unlimited. So what's the difference between a full commercial license to sell 3D printed maps versus unlimited physical prints on public and exclusive models on Maker World? That's just kind of odd. So anyway, I don't know. I think you'd have to, or you could pay annually and save 15%. So if you do annually, it could be $4.25 a month or $7.23. So I really don't know the difference between this, between full commercial license to sell printed maps on any platform of your choice versus the legally sell unlimited physical prints. I'm not sure what that is. That is odd. So if you know what that is, it's early morning here in Korea. So if you know what that is, put it in the comment section down below. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of want to go through this. I know it's live streaming. Some stuff didn't work. We ran it a little bit. But generally overall, this website, map2model.com, is really cool. And it's put on by Smoggy 3D, which, how long are you going to be able to do free files? I don't know. That'll be interesting. I am sure that it will probably get to the point of where you will be limited in the number of downloads that you could do. So it might behoove you to jump on that to get all the personal cityscapes for you. Do it while you can and do it now. Because I think eventually, as I look into my magic latte in the future, they're probably going to lock that down a little bit. Because some people will abuse it, unfortunately, and it is what it is. So anyway, yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll do another follow-up video with the large soul cityscape. Once I get the filament in, should be here in a couple days. And then again, I think each of those big ones will take about 5, maybe 6 hours. And we'll see how that prints out, and we'll make another video on that. So yeah, fun stuff. So with that being said, we're going to close out this video. If you could do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate that. That would help. And I'm trying to get more subscribers, more views, more likes, the whole YouTube thing. If you're watching this on Facebook, go to my YouTube page. It is what it is. If you want to contact me, there's my email address, official thevariedlife@gmail.com. I answer every single email. So if you just want to say hi or questions about me being an American expat in Korea and retired, or hobby and printing stuff, or just shooting the shit, hit me up on the email address. You can also, if you feel the need to buy me more coffee, and Lord knows I love my lattes, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box. And down in the scrolling ticker down here are the awesome people who have bought me coffee, and I have much respect for them. And you can be one of those. But don't worry, if you don't want to, I totally get it. The economy, you got to save your nickels and dimes. But if you do, that's cool. But at least like and subscribe to the channel. That would be the best thing that you could do for me. Okay, so that is going to be it. Map2model.com is pretty good, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, good stuff. I like it. I like it.